Aloha. With this video, I wanted to extend off of the last video about the Church of Innovation and that whole mentality of evolving consciousness. It's not even consciousness because they don't have a word for it. There's no word in the language. You know what I'm saying in reference to like a word. There's no interpretation or understanding or overstanding of what the term consciousness is or means, because consciousness doesn't matter to the mainstream consciousness. That's because the main thing that matters is just your conditioning. So I don't want to spend too long on this, but I wanted to use the example of like our even before this, so I don't forget. A friend of mine was telling me about the way children's books are written, like old school children's books are written. A lot of them are designed just the way the university system is, in order to make you submit or look towards an authority figure like a king or a queen. Like you have to follow the rules. So a lot of the children's books, if you read them, they're about following the rules, submitting to a higher authority, submitting to either the law or like the spirit, like the spiritual law of the monarchy. So you have like the wizards, the Merlin storyline, the whole medieval times, just the same way today's version of history or information is based upon. Like Alex Jones only goes back to 1776 and that whole post-Columbian glory world. They can't go back any further, because if they go back any further than that, their glory will start to diminish, because you'll start to get to the origins of what's going on. Children's books do the same thing, or have been doing the same thing, about going back only so far. The same way history books in school can only go back to what is beneficial or what is not threatening to the mainstream consciousness of the moment. So the mainstream consciousness of this moment is, it doesn't have to be pumped through churches or mainstream religion. It doesn't have to be pumped through the word, like the voice of the king or the queen. It doesn't have to be pumped through the newspaper. It doesn't have to be, I mean, it's all still pumped through all of that stuff. You can see today's version of those things. But the main way that we get our mainstream conditioning these days is, like I said, the children are already preconditioned through K through 12, and even pre-K through 12 with cartoons, movies, and so on and so forth. But you're already preconditioned, so when you get into so-called thinking for yourself, that's when you start to get into a space of thinking you're thinking for yourself, but you're not really thinking for yourself. You're thinking the thoughts that were conditioned into your thought processes. So as long as you're thinking a synthetic thought process, you have the illusion of being alive. You have the illusion of interacting with people. So this is why you have the mainstream media. It's why you have such a diverse form of mainstream media, because it's supposed to mimic the brain or the mentality or the thought processes of the individual. So the same way, like in the last video, the monkey evolution program leads up to the idea of innovation, and human evolution leading to innovation. Well, I lost my train of thought. I was looking at this, but you know what I mean in reference to innovation. And so in reference to this, so the school system adds up to the synthetic interpretation of our version of like conscious innovation. Like what is it really? What at our soul level, beyond the warfare of psychological, spiritual, and physical warfare? You know, what is our purpose here? What is this realm really about? Like, and what are we here to do? We know we can do certain things. We know we've been conditioned to think, act, and feel a certain way. So once all that stuff is dealt with and we clear all that stuff out, what is our purpose now? What's the meaning here? And a lot of people who are still stuck in the mainstream religious consciousness have the same kind of are affected the same way. So they get to that point, just like 1776 for mainstream religious people. Their 1776 is the savior programming, and the Armageddon or whatever their whatever book tells them is to create powerlessness, create hopelessness, to make the individual submit to something else, submit to something, and never really activate who and what you are. So as long as you're submitting to an external savior, an external problem, an external whatever the distraction is, the main thing that happens is that you're not accessing who and what you are, to the depths of who and what you are. You're just allowing yourself to be subjected to what the system has placed out there for you to distract yourself with. Saturday Night Live is a good example of what we are distracted with in reference to the authority of information these days. Because Saturday Night Live, people can break down the whole Saturday, that whole thing. What I'm really talking about now is just kind of like the surface level, how it affects the masses on a larger scale, and how it's really like how Saturday Night Live is a microcosm of the macrocosm that is the so-called innovative mainstream consciousness. So the way Saturday Night Live, and it's also a good example of how information or individuals can be seen as threats. So you can see as like if you had a controversial comedian on Saturday Night Live, just like on YouTube, they wouldn't last too long because the system would find a way to remove them in some kind of way. Now, other people who are non-threatening and who will play the roles that are needed to play and won't question anything, the people who are going to maintain a certain vibe or feel of different characters and people who are going to play the game, they're going to play the roles that need to be played to maintain these mind control programs. Those are the ones who are going to stay on the show. Another deeper example of this is the hierarchy of humans that's out there. So I've already went into the humans and all that, but I'm talking about the hierarchy of intellect and human consciousness. This involves comedy too. So today's version of comedy or humor or anything is very Eurocentric. It's a post-Columbian version. Just the same way university systems are a Eurocentric university kind of psychology. It's all heliocentrism, all this other stuff, this post-Columbian intellect. It's all based upon mind control. Everything in there. Now, that's not to say that the information, it doesn't matter. It doesn't, add up to some degree, some of it. I'm talking about the overall intention of that post-Columbian, it sort of evolved innovative intellect based upon their theories and belief systems. All of that largely is also, this is how race fits in for people who had difficulty with where race fits in. Like I said, I don't need to explain how race fits into anything. For the people who have been experiencing this for our entire lives, we know that it affects even our newborn, like our babies. It affects from our babies, our newborn babies, all the way to our elders. We've had to experience this and still have to experience this. For people who are, going against this stuff, calling me racist for just calling this stuff out, that's the most ignorant shit you could ever say, because you're talking about something you have no way of comprehending. There's no way you could comprehend. That's like saying just because you can sympathize with something, you can empathize with something. Well, that doesn't make any sense, because There wouldn't be no reason for having the word empathy if you could just use sympathy for it. No, it's because you have to live a certain experience in order to experience that. People who haven't, been raised in that kind of system, they don't know. They can only like observe a knowingness. But they can't really get into understanding, and really overstanding. At best, you can get to a baseline understanding, but you'll never get to a space of understanding and overstanding. You can only kind of compare it. There's no comparison there. So what I'm saying is that TV shows like Saturday Night Live are like a microcosm of the macrocosm that is a microcosm of the macrocosm that is the mainstream church of innovation consciousness. So that whole mentality of the psycho-spiritual warfare of the system itself, the language. So these characters represent people. So you don't see any Asians on Saturday Night Live. You don't see any certain things. So it's just the same way you see certain characters in movies, you're gonna see that same kind of demographic in Saturday Night Live. And what that does is it maintains the European innovative version of reality. So it maintains. This is why I said it's important to talk about how race fits into stuff, because that's when you start getting into breaking down the how and the why of a lot of the things, the way things are and the way people perceive certain things. So something like Saturday Night Live, you see each character. So you have like certain characters that are representing age groups, like millennials or something like that. So you got like Pete Davidson on there. More obvious than that, you have like Alec Baldwin, who's a returning character, and he plays all the political stuff. So you have Saturday Night Live, who is basically the mainstream version of Alex Jones. The Weekend Update, that whole news story world, that is the same thing as like InfoWars. So everybody gets their information from comedy these days. So late night talk shows and all that other stuff, that's the real information. While the stuff that comes on the news these days, in reference to numbers and all this, is like the well done consciousness, like the overcooked steak that is piled on with A1. So when you fuck up a steak like that, you have to put all kinds of extra shit on it. So you got to over season it, maybe make it into some fajitas or some shit, and put some A1 sauce on it. If it's just a steak, you got to do all this stuff to it. So not to mention, like I said, for people who are missing that kind of reference, check out the last video where I explain it a little more. Basically, real quickly, it just goes into the pride that people have in the steak dinner reality. The people who are like proud of having access to steak, but they overcook the shit out of it, and then they cover it up with A1 sauce, and then they think they're living a dream. And then the other people who are more in tune, or like understanding of, they think they know how steak is supposed to taste and everything, so they order theirs medium rare, and they think they got it and the understanding. And then other people who are like super extreme about that world, they'll eat raw meat, and then that's the way you're supposed to do it. So more blood the better, that whole thing. Everybody in that mainstream consciousness fits in there, between the blood of that rare steak all the way up to that overdone A1 soaked, well done, overdone steak. So what happens is Saturday Night Live is a good representation of everything between that blood. Not really getting into, but you know what I mean. It's more of a good example. What I really wanted to share with this one is that let me finish the race thing. Like I said, these characters, these actors. So every actor that goes on there, every musician, they're going on there and they're maintaining their complacency. They're maintaining their silence on the issues that matter. And when they're like, when Dave Chappelle go on there, they're actually owning them. they're buying them to co-opt the mainstream storyline. So as as much as Dave Chappelle seems like edgy and all that stuff, when he goes on Saturday Night Live, he's really just playing the game. So like Killer Mike was in the Black Lives Matter time frame protest, that whole thing. He was talking to Bernie Sanders, just for example purposes, if people believe that Bernie Sanders is like going to make a difference or whatever. Or a better example is, let's just say Killer Mike didn't have any kind of political affiliations and he was just talking about the information that he was talking about. But as soon as he joined teams with like Bernie Sanders and then got onto Netflix, then you realize what he's really about. You realize like how far what he's really talking. They're in the system. So this happens every weekend with Saturday Night Live. You get a new entertainer, you get a new artist, a new musician, and a new actor or somebody famous on that regard a new actor to co-opt or co-sign. That's a better co-sign on the mainstream storyline. To co-sign on the mainstream conditioning storyline. They are hired, they are bought to go on there. And then you have the actors on there. They maintain it every week with the weekend news story. This is why they have the news on Saturday Night Live. So just like Saturday Night Live, or just like late night talk shows have evolved into a news scene now, because nobody gives a shit about what celebrities say. That's what it started with, interviewing celebrities and getting more of a personal feel about celebrities. And then celebrities would just tell you the mainstream agenda out of their mouth, and then maintain the mainstream agenda by just keeping their mouth shut outside of the late night talk shows. This is what's happening today. But that's where late night talk shows started. Now they can just use, or it could just use, the late night talk show hosts to expand their agendas onto the masses of people. And then they just use the actors and actresses as just, and musicians as just amplification tools, or like co-signers, like I said before. And this is a good example of that is like the bands for these late night talk shows. They're there to co-sign. So the Roots for Jimmy Fallon, obviously they're the so-called black people co-signers for the white mainstream consciousness on the Jimmy Fallon show. He's the leader. He's the organizer. The same way all the great or the better actors on Saturday Night Live are all so-called white actors and actresses. So this is why you have certain kind of characters. Look, it's a very complex system, and I don't want to do this to like make it seem like I'm coming down on anybody, but I'll use, what the hell is her name? I can't remember her name. The indigenous woman on the right side. I can't remember her name. Maybe it's in here somewhere. Anyway, the point is they purposely put actors and actresses on this show that are not really great, that aren't really funny, that aren't really great, to maintain an atmosphere, like a personal atmosphere towards a certain kind of people. So people feel a certain way because Leslie, that's her name, she maintains the stereotypical black woman storyline, and Keenan does the same thing. He maintains the stereotypical black man, and so he tries to dodge around it, and they play like they try to dodge around it because Michael Che, I think he's one of the lead writers, or is the lead writer of Saturday Night Live now. So they're playing that game like, oh yeah, we're not, this is not white comedy, but because it's written by not white people. But no, and I use those terms as an example of the consciousness, kind of like, just think, when I say that, think of it as like cracked or white out, like I said, the KKK consciousness or the cracked consciousness. I'm not generalizing about the individual. I'm talking about the macro consciousness that is designed to have an effect on us. So when you see a really not funny actress, so-called black woman actress, and you know, next to all these other women, like, and all these other people, you're like, damn, man, this ruins the whole skit, because she's not great, or anybody like that, or she's gonna mess up her lines. Like, you see how that affects you psychologically. You then, because she represents the stereotypical so-called black person, you then feel a certain way, subconsciously, if not consciously. You then start to feel a certain way about the masses of people which she represents. This is why individuals are picked and chosen, and because, and as soon as they start to steer clear, or you know, veer away from the path of what it takes to maintain the mind control program, that's when they'll either be removed, they'll change their style to make them, you know, remove themselves, or so on and so forth, whatever it is. But as long as they play the game, as long as they tell the storylines, as long as they don't ask any questions, and they're not, because Saturday Night Live is not exactly full throttle celebrityism. You're not having a star, at least not anymore. And they can't really have, and this is why Saturday Night Live sucks so much now, because when Saturday Night Live didn't suck, that means it was more influential. Like, that means that it had like even a political influence. So in order to deflect or to take away from that power, it was taken over. The same way late night talk shows were taken over, and then that power was used against the people. The same way anything that's out there that starts off good and true will be co-opted by the system if allowed to. So it's easy to co-opt a lot of these individuals because you have money to do it. Money makes, you know, that world go round. So you just have to get people who are going to play the game. It's just like the Kevin Hart Oscars thing and like the Super Bowl. Some people are not going to do the Super Bowl. Like, I would imagine like somebody like Lauryn Hill, I don't know, but so like the Fugees. If the Fugees were together, they're not going to do the Super Bowl. You know, because they what they were rapping about was about, you know, the very nature, the consciousness of what the Super Bowl represents. So the Fugees wouldn't do that. But, you know, when they broke up and Wyclef started doing his Shakira shit or whatever, you know, all that other TRL shit, and then Lauren was doing her other things. But, you know, Lauren, you know, they were doing, I don't want to get into, you know, the politics of the Fugees and all that, but you understand what I'm saying. If they can't co-opt you, they will destroy you. They will bring you down the same way a lot of these groups like the Fugees and all that other stuff are affected in a certain way. So you see what I mean. Saturday Night Live is a way of maintaining the consciousness of the masses by getting these individuals, and like I said, they get individuals that are it's a timing thing. So we think it's just coincidence. So they got this dude on here because they say to promote his latest movie, but no, it's not to promote the latest movie. It's to promote the latest information that needs the latest, in many ways, the latest political information that needs to get pumped through the mainstream media. They're not on there to promote the movie. They're on there to promote politics through you watching, being attracted by the entertainment of the movie. That's why these actors are on there. And then once they get on there, then the political scene with like, then that starts to take place, and then that's the real thing. And they get their heavy hitters like Alec Baldwin to play Donald Trump, and then they get people like Steve Martin to play Roger Stone to really make you pay attention. Like I said, having Steve Martin and Alec Baldwin on the show to play certain characters is like the opposite version, to emphasize even more the point that I was making. It's like the opposite version of like a Leslie, I can't remember her name, Jones, I think that's her name. It's like the opposite version. She's on there to be perceived as not a great actress, maybe kind of like not that smart. She plays the not smart character a lot, so she maintains a lot of the stereotypes, but she's not great. That's the main thing. She's not a great actress or comedian. She just plays the role of so-called black woman, and they checked that mark off the block. Saturday Night Live, got their Minority Report taken care of. So, 1 second. I need being right now. So these individuals are propaganda robots. They are propaganda robots for the religion of human innovation. They're robots. They're designed to maintain the consciousness of enslavement. So this enslavement is pumped through the storylines that are designed to make you think and act and feel a certain way. The outlets that they do it are obviously the mainstream media, comedy, late night talk show, host, stand-up comedy, Netflix these days, Amazon Prime. This is another thing, I'm glad I remember this now. There might be something someday, sometime coming down with Netflix coming under some fire by the political scene, the same way individuals come under fire, the same way individuals come under fire on YouTube. I'm thinking there's going to be a platform war very soon that will have people being funneled into particular platforms. See, we think it's a platform war now because whatever's dying and Netflix is taking over, but no, this is chess, not checkers. Even Netflix is going to be Netflix is still kind of think of the way Netflix is right now. It's too free, even for the system, as constrained as it is. Obviously, it's mind control. I know that. What I'm saying is that the way Netflix is right now, where they're just throwing out all this money and you can just produce anything, that is not going to fly too far, and that's on purpose. I'm already seeing that as like on purpose. It's going to be used to set the extremes of information, and then it's going to be used to be as the example of why information shouldn't be spread like that, to maintain the mainstream kind of authoritative information stream. So they're gonna sacrifice or like crucify Netflix real soon, because Netflix will be Netflix is gonna be hit by the same kind of it'll either be hit to go down or hit to go up. So it's either gonna get hit to like consumed by like Amazon Prime, or it'll merge with something like Amazon Prime, or it'll be used as like a punching bag to go down to pump up information like Amazon Prime information and YouTube TV and so on and so forth. This is how that system works. It has to create like a bad guy in order to create a good guy mentality. So the bad guy I'm seeing right now is this kind of loose change sort of information that is being pumped out of Netflix. But what really the system really wants is more control. Right now, there's no control over Netflix to some degree. Like I said, and I can't. It's hard for me to even say that. But what I'm saying, this is in reference to the control that the system wants. The type of control the system wants to have over entertainment and information is not the way Netflix is operating. It's too much. The system wants more control. The way the system wants control is basically the way even YouTube is too much. This is a good example, and I didn't realize this until I looked at it recently. Check out Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime is the network, entertainment network that the system wants. So on Amazon Prime, you can access, I think, Showtime and all these other channels, CBS, MSNBC. You can basically, Amazon Prime is the blending, it's the mixing of TV, like mainstream TV, Netflix, and the new age psychology. So the breakdown of Amazon Prime is like a trifecta. It has the mainstream storyline, like the mainstream consciousness. It has the Netflix vibe of, you know, information all over the place. But it also has the kicker of like specific new age intentions and progressive or liberal intentions. Netflix is more focused on just like movies, and it veers into that stuff only on certain documentaries and stuff like that. But that's not what the system wants. The system wants something like Gaia TV or the Gaia YouTube channel to be pumped into the mainstream consciousness the same way the Super Soul Sunday Oprah consciousness is pumped into the masses through her network. And what network is on Amazon Prime? Just like any other thing that would be on like Netflix, like any kind of series would be on Netflix, like Shameless is on Netflix and Showtime is on Amazon Prime. Well, think of what other channel or access channel is on Amazon Prime. Yes, you guessed it. The Gaia channel is on Amazon Prime. And they have all that Ancient Aliens is also on Amazon Prime. Point being is that there's more control there. There's more control of the information. There's more tangibility. There's more substance there. So it goes more into the extremes. See, Netflix just stays in like the Saturday Night Live stream of information. Once you start getting into the new age coding and downloading and programming and conditioning of individuals, that's when you start getting into the higher sort of manipulations of consciousness. And that's where Amazon Prime is. Netflix just wants to entertain you. It's going to put, you know, stand-up comedy. That's what it's for. It's just to get the Netflix and chill. Like the people who are just going to, you know, sit around and relax and, you know, fuck around. Because that's all they have the energy for after working their lives away for their entire lives. So they're just going to Netflix and chill. But for the people who are going to get out there and thinking that they're thinking on a deeper level, they're going to venture into like the Amazon Prime sort of new age. So the Amazon Prime Gaia TV is more of a heavier segue or, you know, prepositioned segue for individuals into the new age thought process or community. So back when I was sucked into the new age community consciousness, at that time my only segue was like YouTube channels. So like there was a bunch of documentaries that were coming out on Facebook, that not Facebook but just like not televised but marketed on Facebook, that were on YouTube, or that you could find them some kind of way. You can download them in some kind of way, and it had a lot of really important information like Kymatica, Loose Change, Zeitgeist. All this stuff is now on Netflix. Well, Kymatica is not on there, but the Zeitgeist mentality, like I said, controlling the narrative, controlling the truth narrative. Zeitgeist is on Netflix now, so they want you to look at that. They want you to think about that mentality. It's that free energy, build a new technologically based society. Don't at all heal any of the wounds. Only focus on the fucked up shit that's happening in the world and then fix it. It's just a broken system. You just have to fix it. It's not something that, you know, is meant to be this way. So this is what the system, like the fake or the the preposition information is affecting us, or what it's meant to do. The next kind of mind control program, like I've been saying, is this Gaia TV with David Wilcock, alien disclosure. What are they talking about? Alien extraterrestrial UFO disclosure. That's the blending between politics and like human everyday life. And that's what the system wants to do. Like I said in the last video, the system needs to blend a lot of these bigger programs. This is why everything is being blended together. This is why people talk about, we need to be talking about unity and all that other stuff. I'm like, be careful what you wish for. I keep saying that all the time. If you keep yelling and spouting off all this, like, we're all one, we're all human, you're being divisive because you're mentioning race, you're actually playing, you're mouthing off the actual mind control program of the system. They're going to sell it back to us as soon, because the same way that mainstream flat earthers are prepping the flat earth for the new age with all the only linear topic based sort of flat versus globe, the physical reality, and never really talking about the lie itself, like going to the depths of the lie. Main thing, not saying never really, saying that the lie itself is not the focal point. The lie itself is in the background, and that's a big ass problem, especially when the focal point is the physical stuff, which could be easily co-opted and is the main thing that will be sold by the system. So people are prepping people for the mainstream version, the mainstream interpretation of so-called flat earth or the not heliocentric reality, when we could be challenging ourselves to go to the greater extremes, the depths of what this realm is, who we are, how we interpret this stuff, and so on and so forth. See, the same way Saturday Night Live affects the consciousness of the masses of people in the mainstream media, the flat earth, mainstream flat earth consciousness of flat versus globe affects the so-called truthers and everything else the same way. So what happens, you had on Saturday Night Live, you have people at work, arguing about certain storylines that were, talked about on Saturday Night Live. Well, in the so-called truther community, you have people arguing flat versus globe. Instead of going into the lie and the depths of others, instead of, the individuals at work, instead of them talking about Saturday Night Live, they could be talking about, expanding their consciousness beyond all this other, shit that's out there to trap us. Same thing happens in truther community. Truther community is not focused on, they're not talking about, empowering the self and not going into that. They're talking about the distraction, what was prepositioned out there, what the system wants you to focus on. So once we start realizing that, that's when we'll start to break it down. We haven't even, on a larger scale, haven't really realized that yet, because largely people are still trying to, realize, or trying to see, clear out all this distractive bullshit. So they get all these attractive people in some kind of way, whether it's funny or physical or, show some skin, or like this Pete Davidson and Ariana Grande thing. That whole thing was designed to make you focus on the politics, the information. Which is more important? Which is the information more important in the Saturday Night Live discussion with Ariana Grande and Pete Davidson? Is it their relationship? No, it's the amount of people who tune in to the political conditioning program as a result of their bullshit, mainstream distractive marriage and gone awry, and now their new relationships. What are they talking about now? It's the adolescent consciousness. It's the submitting to an authority consciousness. It's no different than, like I was saying, about all the other stuff. This is how we are locked into this conditioning program. We don't even realize it. And then they just give these individuals these awards to make you think that they are credible in some kind of way, that their word or their work is credible in some kind of way. when you're not really accessing the reality that they are bought and paid to make you think, act, and feel a certain way? Why do you think it's so ridiculous? Why do you think this, like Saturday Night Live, like I said, they made Saturday Night Live, they hired these mediocre comedians on purpose to maintain the velocity of information. Because if you had, you know, way more intelligent, way more funny comedians on Saturday Night Live like they had back in the day, like I said, that would be a threat to the storyline. But no, you just have to control the owners. You just have to control Lorne Michaels, and you know, who controls the funneling of people going through. You know, the reason why Keenan's been on there so long is because he's not threatening. He's the typical not threatening so-called black man. So he's gonna play all the roles. He's gonna play all the characters that need to be played in that liberal, so-called not threatening black man consciousness, and that will dumb down and soften all of the discussions that are seemingly underneath the mainstream conscious. So individuals like Keenan, he doesn't understand, you know, what he represents, because he either he doesn't know or doesn't care, and if he does know, he's still gotta, you know, provide for his family or whatever, for himself, or if he's by himself. And you know, people don't give a shit whether they have a family or not. It doesn't matter. They don't give a shit. They're gonna play this role. Point is, they're hired to play that role, and they're kept on there to play that role. And like I said, you got two or three. They're out there to maintain the perspective of the minority, the same way like the minority in reference to the superpower of intellect. So Saturday Night Live, so having the minorities on Saturday Night Live and having all these other individuals represent the peak of comedy, the peak of live television, the peak of what is, you know, political and so on and so forth. It's the white people that are going to do it. So-called white people are the only ones that see this, and I'll end it on this too. Saturday Night Live is a good example of the primitive and savage post-Columbian mentality, the primitive and savage mentality of the indigenous people in reference to the innovation-based post-Columbian consciousness. How that is like I said, you have two or three at most not so-called white people on the show, but and to boot, they're not great actors. They're not funny. They're always secondary, third at best, because on Saturday Night Live, the second most funny in this case nowadays, because they're pushing the whole women's agenda, to be like the forefront of whatever in reference to, that's like the Godzilla versus the King Kong, the patriarchy versus the women's movement now. This is that whole fake, you know, get better thing. The minorities being on there is a microcosm of the minorities mentality in the world, when the reality is that the so-called not white people, the black and brown peoples around the world, are not at all minorities. You want to talk about unifying and everything, you need to start attacking this Eurocentric, colonial-centric. This is the most divisive shit out there. People want to attack me for the information that I share on this little piddly-ass fucking YouTube channel, when you don't have the balls or the intelligence to break down the divisive nature of the mainstream reality itself. You're so consumed by your own subconscious and conscious racist and all that other conditioning nature that you would rather attack one individual person instead of focusing and challenging yourself to realizing the true divisive nature of an actual consciousness that was created, that is still being maintained and evolved every day. This consciousness of the origins of racism, the origins of white supremacy, the origins of colonialism, the origins of Columbianism, the origins of worshiping technology and innovation and the university system and heliocentrism, the origins of how all that shit connects and relates directly to the race storyline. To this day, you still have 95+% of so-called white people maintaining the storyline of mind control and mass, and yet so-called truthers still want to act like race isn't in the storyline. Look at Saturday Night Live. Look at the White House. Look at the name of the White House. Look at the storyline. Russia versus the Americans. You know, this is Godzilla versus King Kong. It's very race driven. Superpower ain't got shit to do with the so-called white people in the world. That's the illusion. It's a synthetic world. But in order to make the illusion, the synthetic world, your real world, they have to make it. They have to make these villains out there. So you got Trump, and he's teaming up with the other super white villain, Putin. That's the big storyline. And then you got the super white superheroes, who are the aggressive progressive and the liberals and the Republicans, depending on what perspective you want to come from. They're the real leaders of the free world, the new world. You see what I'm saying? People don't want to talk about that. All the truther communities out there, they don't want to mention this shit. They will talk about everything else the same way the mainstream media wants you to talk about and everything else, except the actual origins, except the actual meat and potatoes of what's going on. No, they want you to get distracted by all this bullshit, these celebrities out there. So, yeah, I'll leave it there. I just wanted to put this out there. Good thing I went down the same way. Like I said, this is a good example. This Saturday Night Live Thanksgiving part. This is another good example of how the post-Columbian or the New World consciousness is conditioned into our reality on deeper levels, even like subconscious. So people like the Christmas show. You want to watch the Christmas Saturday Night Live. You want to watch the Thanksgiving show. You want to go to the picnic, the 4th of July picnic. All your friends are there. You want to go to the Christmas party. You want to go to the Easter celebration with your grandma and all this other stuff. You see how this stuff is like deeply ingrained into your interactive life. And then even when you go there with your family, you go to Thanksgiving, you go to the Christmas dinner, your lives are consumed by political talk. You can't even have a personal, like, one-on-one discussion with your friends and family because you know it's going to get politicized because of the conditioning that's out there. So now your holidays, the one time that you got together with your family and talked real shit, that time is not even there anymore because it's been consumed by the Saturday Night Live consciousness, the Saturday Night Live mind control programming. So this is how the psychospiritual warfare of like this post-Columbian was it information. I'll figure it out in the title or whatever. But you see what I'm talking about. They maintain the belief in the way the world is by using these lackeys and all their TV shows. And then, like I said, they're dumb. Like, they're not saying they're dumb, but they're like not really intelligent people. So when you ask these actors and actresses all this information about political stuff, they're gonna tell you what they're gonna default to. What leave that to the politicians, which is exactly what the system wants. It's the same way they keep athletes dumb, and then pay them millions of dollars, keep their mouth shut, and they won't say anything. And this is what the system is about. So until people on a massive scale start, getting out of the distractive storylines that are gearing up even more, YouTube and Amazon Prime and Netflix, they're gearing up even more. Amazon ain't going nowhere. It's just going to get bigger. It's going to get more evolved. It's going to learn more. It's going to buy more shit. Eventually, I think Amazon might be the new Netflix because, like I said, Netflix is going to be something. One of these platforms is going to be taken down. You can't have all of them out there doing this, not when you want to control everything. So If you're gonna ask me which one's gonna be taken down, Amazon or Netflix, or like I said, there's the other option of merging the two, but I'm talking about for example purposes of how the system works. If you're gonna ask me which one's gonna be taken down, obviously gonna be Netflix, because Amazon is not just Amazon Prime is not just Amazon Prime with movies and shit. Amazon Prime is Amazon. So Netflix is just fucking Netflix. That's all it is. All it has is Netflix and chill and, you know, a few celebrities. Amazon Prime has Amazon. It has lasting power. Netflix really doesn't have that. It can be imploded or bought out or merged at any time. And as soon as Netflix gets bought by Amazon Prime or any kind of other conditioning, so what they'll do is they'll suck out all the information that you thought was truthful, like the Zeitgeist documentary. I'll use that as an example. They'll suck that out of your information stream the same way InfoWars was sucked out of your information stream. That's not only to take the information away from you, that's also to make you want that kind of information. And that's also to make you need and desire that kind of information and believe that that information is the real information that's a threat to the system because it was taken out. No. It was just the televised information that was taken out in front of you to make you focus on that. And then once it's bought out and they clear all the threatening stuff out of there and they replace it with all non-threatening stuff like Gaia, extraterrestrial disclosure shit, stuff that fits right in the government storyline, that's when, you know, the system, like I said, the system's it's 100 moves out ahead of you. 100 moves ahead of the system. And if you're focusing on the information from the head of the system and not breaking down the how, the what, and the why, or the how, the why consciousness beyond the what and the who consciousness, then you're going to be trapping yourself. It's an entrapment program. So I'll leave it there. That's a good note to leave Saturday Night Live and so on and so forth on. So yeah, thank you for joining me. There's one more thing I wanted to say in reference to innovation. Oh, that's what it was. Saturday Night Live is kind of like, so the last video was talking about innovation and how like technology has evolved and innovation is key. Well, comedy, information, evolving or innovating innovating comedy and information through comedy is another version of like the last video, talking about how innovation is the only thing we need to focus on. When Joe Rogan says innovation, he's saying the expansion of the colonial consciousness, the expansion of the propaganda machine. That's what he means by innovation. The Western colonial consciousness evolving into the next gear, the next control grid. That's what he means when he's talking about innovation. Saturday Night Live and television as a whole does this all the time. It does this by making you think that innovation, or making you think that information is evolving. It's not. It's just changing into a new program. So I just wanted to say that just to keep in mind that that's how the system is changing. That's how the system is sucking more and more people into this parasitic system. So yeah, on that note, thank you for joining me. Thank you for the support. And from all my relations, until next time, peace, love, and harmony.